The Prisoners of Hope. They were young when they first entered the church. For many, it was supposed to be a sanctuary. Bright lights, gospel music, promises of healing and purpose. Jesus Dominion International, led by the Nigerian televangelist Timothy Omotoso, was not just a church, it was a world. Parents trusted it, children grew in it, and young women were told that service to God began with obedience to the man who claimed to be his prophet. But behind the sermons and choirs, behind the sleek television broadcasts, another story unfolded. A story whispered first in shame, then in fear. Girls being taken in, controlled, silenced, and violated. Among them was Cheryl Zondi, who would later become the first to testify in court. She was only 14 when Omotoso began abusing her. For years, she carried the weight alone, convinced no one would believe her if she spoke. Others lived the same nightmare. Young women who wanted to sing in the choir, who wanted to serve in church, only to find themselves trapped. What bound them together was silence, but silence like glass can shatter. In 2017, Omotoso was arrested at Port Elizabeth Airport. The charges, rape, sexual assault, trafficking, racketeering, were the culmination of years of suppressed voices finally being heard. When the case opened, the women who had once been silent became witnesses, their stories broadcast across the nation. The trial was long, drawn out, and brutal. For 8 years, the survivors relived their pain in public. They endured cross-examination that cut into them like knives, endured delays that left their lives suspended, endured public scrutiny that doubted and shamed them. Still, they stood. The cameras showed a new South Africa, young women, faces steady, voices breaking but unbroken. They were mocked as liars by some, hailed as heroines by others, but above all, they refused to be erased. When Cheryl Zondi finished her testimony in 2018, she walked out of the courtroom not as a victim, but as a symbol. Her words had cracked open a wall. More women came forward, civil groups rallied. The trial itself became a mirror, forcing the country to look at its justice system, its treatment of survivors, and the deep wounds of gender-based violence. Then came April 2025. The judgment fell. Omotoso was acquitted. After 8 years of waiting, fighting, speaking, the court declared that the case had not been proven beyond reasonable doubt. To the survivors, it was like being wounded a second time. The nation erupted in outrage. Women's leagues, human rights groups, and ordinary citizens filled the airwaves with condemnation. And yet, the survivors did not fade into defeat. Standing together, they called themselves not victims, but prisoners of hope. "We spoke our truth," they said. "We carry pain, but we also carry strength." They reminded the country that their courage had kept a predator behind bars for 8 years, that their testimony had ignited a national reckoning. They had not lost everything, because their voices had changed South Africa. Their movement became larger than one man, larger than one verdict. They pushed for inquiries into the justice system, reforms for gender-based violence cases, and protection for future survivors. They turned trauma into a banner and carried it forward, insisting that no one should again have to wait nearly a decade to be heard. The story of the Prisoners of Hope is not one of a courtroom victory. It is the story of women who chose to tell the truth in a world that tried to silence them. Their legacy is not written in legal documents, but in the lives they touched, the debates they forced open, the reforms that are still being shaped in their name. They entered the church as seekers of faith. They emerged as witnesses. And though the system failed them, they refused to fail themselves. That is how their names became part of South Africa's larger story, not only as survivors of a predator, but as women who carried their nation one step closer to justice.